What is up, Badger fans? Are we better or worse as a football team than we were last year? Rajiv and I are going to get into it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Appreciate every single person tuning in as always. However you catching it live, catching on YouTube later, catching on audio while you're driving to work, whatever, however, thank you. That's our guy, Rajiv, over there. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, all customers through September 22nd can bet $5, get a 3-week free trial NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We got an interesting comment from over on the Discord. I'm going to throw it up there, and then I want your take on this. This is from Levon Woods, although I think he just changed his name. I don't actually know his original name on there. Do we have a worse team this year despite having an objectively better roster? He goes on to say early returns are surprisingly bad. Two cupcake games last year, we averaged 475 yards and 36.5 points. Two cupcake games this year, 385 yards, 27.5 points. So through that easy part of the schedule, significantly worse offensively. I mean, by just about any metric. And I would also point out, he didn't bring this up, but Wisconsin obviously did not play at Bama last year. They played Ohio State at home, and it was a far closer game than this year's playing Alabama at home.
Yeah, it was a far closer game. It was also later in the season. I mean, obviously, there's that element of it. I think that it's a really fair question to ask, honestly, because our results haven't really been better, and on paper, we're definitely better. I think it's a mixed bag. I think there are parts that are better and parts that are worse, and I think they kind of net out to zero in a sense as of right now. Our linebackers are better. I think that's clear just because there's more speed. They're better. Are they playing amazing? No, but they're better. Our defensive line took a step back because when you lose JTJ, and we don't talk about that a lot, but JTJ being gone for the whole season injured is a really big deal. He wasn't a world beater, but I mean, he was our best lineman last year, Rodis Johnson and Gio Pius to LSU. Not that there's a ton of production, but if those three guys would have come back and JTJ wouldn't have been hurt, it's almost as if we would have an improved line. So that's, I think, taking a step back, which is why we're seeing difficulties with the run defense. Our secondary, I think, is a bit improved just because they have more time. Offensively, certainly the line is better just because they have that extra year. But quarterback play, I mean, I think if Tyler Van Dyke was healthy, the answer would be I think we would be better because I think we would be better in the long term. But with Braden Locke, now you're going to Tanner Mordecai and comparing. I mean, we had a running game last year, like from a quarterback perspective, that was a really valuable tool. We don't have that anymore. So I guess my answer is I think it's kind of a wash because there's parts of the team that are worse and there's parts of the team that are better. But in the end, we're probably about the same as we were. I think that'll shake out for the rest of the season. And that's kind of where you get to, we were 7-5 last year. We're about the same. We have a tougher schedule. So maybe 6-6 is where we're going to be, which is why the original line maybe was 6.5 for the season.
Turns out Vegas, man. Let me ask you this, because I agree. I don't think the defensive line is as good. I kind of wonder if two of the pieces that we're missing that people don't talk about enough, Rajiv, Braylon Allen, there was a lot of talk about running backs are going to be better because this will be a better fit without Braylon Allen. And I don't know why I put that sarcastic tone in there. I'm not trying to belittle any opinions. Well, maybe that was an NFL running back and the running backs aren't better because you don't just replace NFL talent. Fit or not fit. He statistically was better than what we're doing now. And your boy, and you brought this up on the show, we have better snaps now. Renfro's not a better lineman than Bortolini. So I don't know if the line is better. I think it's better in the edges. I don't know if it's better without Bortolini, who was also an NFL third or fourth round pick. I forget. That's a real legit dude in the middle of the line. There's been a couple plays, and this is something Curtis brought up. He went back and watched the All-22, and he pointed out Renfro's getting walked back a little bit. He's not – Bortolini was a really good lineman. Braylon Allen was an NFL running back. The defensive line is worse. So here's what I'd flip it around to you. Are you sure the roster is objectively better? Because you just said it was, but we're about the same. I'm going to tell you, I don't think it is objectively better.
I mean, I think
it's a little better, but I don't think it's like, yes, this roster is way better than last year's. I don't think it is.
That's fair. It's not way better. It's just better in certain positions. So you're right about that because, I mean, not that DK was a big productive wide receiver last year, but DK was still a journeyman wide receiver that we had for several years in the program. So we lost him. We haven't really replaced a ton of that production. Obviously, Tretch is on the roster now, or well, he was on the roster last year, but I feel like that's a fair point. And when you're kind of like, you lost sort of the spine of that offensive team, right? Like your center, your quarterback, your running back, like it's a pretty big three, pairing right there, or trio, if you will. So that's a fair point. I think that the guards are certainly playing well. The tackles are certainly playing better. So I think overall, I will still say the line is better. But look, it's football. You live and die by the quarterback. I mean, I feel like if Tyler Van Dyke is healthy right now, that Alabama score isn't as bad in the end. And we're not feeling horrible but we don't know what we would have seen. We don't really know what that game plan was with Tyler Van Dyke and how much we would have seen. So I don't know. I mean, I think now everything kind of just gets tossed out the way because at this point, without our starting quarterback, we're not. I mean, Braden Locke is not better than Tanner Mordecai.
Yeah, well, it was proven last year. I agree. Yeah, I agree with your point on the linebackers. Secondary's a year older. Some of the young players are here, which is going to help. I will say this too. There's more young pieces on this team than last year's that have more of a growth potential as the season goes on. Like you mentioned, Wisconsin did play later in the year last year, right?
Especially defensively. Yeah.
Especially defensively, 100%. I think that's a fair point too. 4 or 5 games down the road, what is Darian Dupree doing? What is Xavier Lucas doing? What is maybe Heiberger's back at that point? And I know they want to play him if he's healthy. So I do think there's some higher upside pieces on this team that as the season goes on, this roster could get better and better because those guys are going to develop. But it is a little concerning, right? You're in year 2. And I think most people would say this roster is better. And I would agree. I would agree with that. But it is a little concerning in year 2 that you're even asking that question.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that, we just don't talk about it enough. We talk about line enough, but we just sort of expected that the line wasn't great last year, the defensive line, and the line was still not going to be great. But, I mean, those guys weren't playing horrible at the end of the year. JTJ, Rodis Johnson, even Paez to an extent, they were playing okay. And when you lose that much sort of production, if you will, off the defensive line, I think we might have undervalued those losses. I mean, obviously the JTJ one we just found out about before the season, but even the other two. So, I mean, I think that there is something to that. And that's why I don't think you've seen the defense pick up where they left off at the end of last year. Or they're going to have to grow into that again because I think that line has to improve. And I think it will, hopefully, especially with Elijah Hills and them. But I mean, the linebackers are definitely there. I mean, we should be better. We should be far better defensively because of the strength of those linebackers. But, Chaney hasn't been what you thought he was going to be. Tackett's been certainly better. And if hopefully we can get Allegro out there, it could be better. But it is an interesting discussion because ultimately coming into the year, we thought better roster. It's not really looking that way. And now you throw in Tyler Van Dyke and everything is, up in smoke.
Being a fan is hard, man. It's a hard racket being a fan.
And it's hard. Obviously, I've said many times I'm going to the USC game next week, and I want to just be pumped about it. And I am. I'm going to be so excited because I absolutely think we can go in there and do, and get something done. It's not going to pick us to win, but look, if we can run the ball and we can do things the right way, and we can, do things that you always need to do, win the turnover margin, right? That's not a given, but if that happens, hey, anything can happen at USC. No team we're going to play is going to be Alabama. No team the rest of the way is going to look like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. And by the way, you should be excited. You're going to go to the Coliseum to watch the Badgers play. I absolutely be freaking excited. And Wisconsin could win that game. That wouldn't shock anybody. By the way, USC playing Michigan coming off of that. Let's keep an eye on what happens there. But listen, there's a great opportunity because I mentioned this on the other day, or even on a short I did. There's no Wisconsin's not in Michigan's realm just in terms of recognition. The Michigan game's a bigger game for USC. You could catch them on a little bit of a letdown following whatever happens in the Michigan game. So I'd be excited, man. A lot can happen there. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to come back. We're going to talk basketball. We're going to talk basketball, Rajiv. We got schedule release. I want to talk storylines I'm excited about. And then we're going to talk about the same question. Is this team better than last year's team that we just talked about with football? That's all coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show, great friends of the show over at eBay Motors. Rajiv, talk to me. What do you do when you need to get car parts and do some work on your vehicle?
You think I do work on my vehicle? You must be joking.
Well, if you were a handy person and you wanted to, I'm not saying you're not, but if you wanted to do work on your vehicle, keep your ride or die alive, Rajiv, go over to eBay Motors, the right parts, the right fits, the right prices, the biggest inventory, over 122 million parts. And my car is like, they get you where you got to go. So you got to take care of your ride or die. My first car, I named her April. She was a Trans Am, got carjacked in her. That relationship ended shortly after that. But if I had the money and I wanted to take care of her, I would have gone to eBay Motors. Eligible items only, exclusions to apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Keep your ride or die alive over at ebaymotors.com. Maybe someday Rajiv turns into a bit of a gearhead. He'll head over there as well. Get some spark plugs, swap them out. All right, let's get back into the show. Let's talk some basketball. Something we haven't hit on in a bit. I love basketball. Rajiv loves basketball, and it's coming up. Schedule release. Let's start there. So I'll be honest, I'm not a huge schedule guy. Like I like it in terms of a milestone because when the schedule, then you know it's coming. Are you a big schedule guy, or is it more just like the milestone is here?
No, I'm a big schedule guy. I love it. I love the schedule release. I just think it's nice to just kind of mentally pace through the entire schedule and think, oh, we could win that one. Then the tough stretches. Like I also look at games I want to go to. You know, I'm looking at January 18th and the 21st. They're going to UCLA and USC. 100% going to be there for that. So, I mean, yeah, I love it. And I also love it's also with the new Big Ten. I was very interested to see how that worked. Every team obviously plays every team once. Plus, there's 3 teams you will play twice, right? So there's 17 opponents, and then 3 of them you play twice to get to 20. And that for us is Iowa, Minnesota, and Illinois. So I looked for that too. I knew, like, you know, I think they did kind of come out with this, who the opponents were, but I didn't remember them. So I was immediately looking for that. Like, who do we get twice? And it's not great because Illinois is obviously one of the better teams in the conference. We don't want to see them twice. Minnesota overperformed a little bit last year. And then Iowa was finished 1 game below us at 10-10. So like, I feel like they're always going to be tough. So I don't love that. But at the end of the day, like, it's nice to see kind of how it all shakes out, and just really gets me excited about the other sport. And like, this is how sad it is. Like, I wanted to talk basketball tonight a little bit, just because one of the things that's really depressing me right now is looking at my ESPN app and seeing that tomorrow night there is a game between 2 ranked Big Ten teams named Illinois and Nebraska. That is freaking depressing, man. I really am not happy about that. And it's just like, so basketball is a nice little diversion for me because I'm really unhappy about seeing that on the schedule. And we don't even get to play this week to, you know, get excited about our team playing.
Yeah, who would have thought you'd be saying that, you know, a couple games through Luke Fickell's second season, where you'd be like, God, thank goodness, great guards on the horizon. But I'm going to see some offense from that unit, right? Like, let's talk about basketball. A season of change, right? I want to start with some storylines first. What are you excited about? Whether it's storylines, players, and then get into the big question. Do you think this 2025 team or 2024-2025 team is going to be better than last year's squad? Let's do some storylines. It could be new players, it could be coaching, it could be whatever it is. What's something you're super excited about watching this year?
So my big storyline going into this season is, like, there's 2 things that our team lacked last year that every good, whether it's Bo Ryan team or whether it's even Greg Guards and the good teams that he had, defense and the ability to really shoot the 3 with some level of consistency. And, you know, if you look at the COVID year team, right, I mean, we were in the top 15 defensively. If you look the year before that, we were in the top 10 defensively as far as scoring defense. Our worst 3-point shooter was Nate Reavers, and he shot the ball 34%, right? And he took 89 threes. So, like, the COVID year. So I feel like that's a staple of a good Wisconsin basketball team, especially when you don't have the super athleticism that other teams have. You've got to play good defense and shoot the 3 well. So the biggest thing for me going into this year is, if you look at last year's team, we finished 113th defensively. We talked ad nauseum about the defense. And really, other than Klesmit and Blackwell and then Crowell, when he would be willing to shoot, there wasn't a lot of excitement about the 3-point shooting. Well, those three guys I just mentioned are coming back. And then you add to that Xavier Amos and John Tanji that both shoot over 38% from three. So it's like all of a sudden you look at the starting lineup and you're like, oh, everybody can shoot three. Everybody's got a jump shot. You know, you're not going to have Tyler Wall standing back there knowing he's not going to shoot. You're going to have you gave up AJ Storr, lost him as one of the worst defenders we've had on the team. Yeah, she lost something in Chucky, but I feel like that's the storyline. It's like we kind of are getting back to a little bit of an older sort of style of Greg Gard ball. That's like, this could be successful. Defense and the ability to shoot, which is something that we really, really lacked last year.
Yeah, let me pair that with my biggest storyline, because I think that what you just said works with my storyline. Getting back to kind of Greg Gard, I also want to see what Greg Gard, to me, this is a bit of a litmus test. Not a litmus test, that's probably too far, but this is a bit of a test to see how Greg Gard does in the new era of college basketball. He wants to go back to a little bit of positionless basketball. Everybody can shoot, you can interchange. But this is also the first real big test for him in the portal era, right? You lost a bunch of guys. Can you reload, Greg Gard? Can you successfully, in an offseason, reload multiple pieces? Because that's a requisite now for coaches, football and basketball, but more so basketball. You have to be able to go out in the portal and find fits and plug them in and coach them up and fit your system year one. Can he do it? I don't know. You don't. I don't think anybody really knows, but this is our first big test of that. I'm excited to see what it looks like.
Yeah, because the team is going to look totally different, right? And you know, whether if you can look at the stats of these guys and from where they played before, but they didn't really play at big programs. Well, I mean, the guy from Mizzou did, but it's like you just don't really know. And like we didn't know with football players either. You don't really know until they gel in, and it could be great. It could be a disaster. And that storyline, you're right. I mean, it's like, this is a huge roster changeover, the first of its kind for him. And yeah, what can he do with it? And are we really going to see an improved level of defense? Because I think the upside that I see with this roster is actually pretty legit, because the shooting is there. So theoretically the offense should be a little bit better. And you know, if we have anything upwards on the defensive side of the ball, is going to be a huge win.
I'm excited to see Freitag. That's another one. You just get excited about the new pieces. You get excited about the sports car. He's a freshman. They're not bringing him in here to sit him. He has to be able to prove he can shoot the ball. I think you're going to see 10 minutes-ish to start, like a Blackwell type role coming off the bench. And then how he plays is going to really determine where he goes. But I'm excited to see him. Wisconsin's not had an athlete in the backcourt. And part of it is, like, you watch sports to be entertained. Like, I love winning. Like, I love the Badger teams of past year just grinding teams into the dirt. But it's also fun just to see some explosive plays. You know, that's kind of why you enjoy sports, to see people do things you can't do. So that's another guy. I'm very excited to see Freitag. And then Blackwell's my other one. Like, I think Blackwell's going to take a massive jump. I think he's a star. I think he might be the best player on the team this year. So I'm excited to see what he can do sophomore season.
Yeah, Blackwell is the thing I was going to mention as well, just because I feel like every year, if you look back at the stars that this team has had over the past 10, 15 years, there's a season that there's like they all have like the one breakout year where they're like, they took their big step. They all of a sudden just like, you know, hit up the national stage of like stardom. And not to say that he's going to be that, but like, you know, I do feel like there is a star budding in Blackwell. And I agree with you completely. That's a huge storyline. What I wrote down was, how big of a step did he take and how big of a star can he be? I mean, I think that's really, and that could be everything changing both ways for us. We could be a far better team with him, and then how he pairs with the other players. But Blackwell is kind of like that X factor of the year. He could really take a step, and we could be that much better, because boy, did we see some great flashes from that guy last year.
And I think I don't think people realize at times just how good he was as a true freshman. Like, the shooting percentage from deep, incredible, but his ability to get to mid-range spots, his ability to punish people in a variety of different ways offensively, he was the best we had at getting to the free throw line as a freshman. Like, that's incredible. Like, getting to the line, hitting mid-range, hitting three-pointers. You have a 3-level score. And then defensively, he was inconsistent. There were a lot of moments where you could tell he was a little out of place, a little footwork stuff. He got beat straight line a little too easily. But he's a big, strong athlete for a guard, for a wing defender. I think he's going to get better there. He's going to continue to refine the ability to get to the rim. I think if he adds a little post game, which great guard, he wants to do with his guards, he wants to invert. I think he's strong enough and has enough touch on that mid-range jumper to do that. I think there's not this year. I think there's an all Big Ten type season in Blackwell. Second team, 13. I think that's there. I think he's the star in the making for the Badgers.
I would almost expect that, not necessarily this year, but I would be so disappointed if he didn't have that, and even more potentially. And the thing about free tag, let me ask you this: when do you think, and if so, when do you think he will be our starting point guard?
Ooh, I love this question. I don't think he will be if Cameron Hunter stays healthy.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he will be if Cameron Hunter stays healthy. For a couple of reasons. The first is I don't think it's needed. If you bring him off the bench, if he gets 10, 15 minutes, I think that's fine. And maybe he's the finisher, right? Like your closing lineup isn't always your starting lineup. But I think you're bringing Cam Hunter over to be the starter. He's going to start that way. He's a guy who has intangibles that you want from a starting point guard, like coming from where he's come from. His story is interesting. Like he is loves being here. You should hear him talk about his teammates, about Greg Gard, about Madison. I think he's the type of guy you're going to want as a bit of your heart, and I think you want your heart starting. Freitag ultimately is going to be a better player, but I think he can get his minutes this year, and Cam Hunter can still start.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think definitely. I think it depends on how effective he is offensively too, because I think we both agree that Freitag can be effective offensively and will be a weapon, and it's certainly the athleticism that he brings. I think he's more athletic than Cam Hunter, so I do think that's if Hunter is effective and we are being efficient offensively as a team, I think that he stays in there to kind of be that floor general. But if we're not, and if we're struggling offensively, I feel like that's when we might see it switch around, just kind of like we saw sort of Connor work his way in. And, a couple years ago, I feel like if you need the offense, you're going to have to put him out there. But hopefully, I agree. I'd like to see him learn from the bench, come onto the bench, make an impact, and then be sixth man type stuff. And then, eventually work his way in next year or later this year.
Yeah. And listen, who knows with Cam Hunter too, right? Hunter missed last year with injury, the year before, at a much lower level program. Like it's certainly possible he comes in and struggles, and then you're forced to make that. Like Hunter, Tanjay, Amos, all these guys are bumping up a level. I mean, Tanjay was at Mizzou last year, but it was like an abbreviated thing. He was hurt. Like all these guys are bumping up a level. It's not likely it works out perfectly for each one of them. Like if there's one thing we've learned in the portal, it's that like there's hits and misses. So yeah, maybe that would force, like to your point, a Freitag bump if it's not effective. All right, we're going to take a quick break, last break of the show. Then we're going to come back. We're going to ask the money question to Rajiv. This team better or worse than last year? We're not going to be able to push on this one. You're going to have to say better or worse than last year. Coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is your number one source for all your sports betting needs. Greatest sportsbook that we use. It's fast, easy, it's intuitive, it's simple. And right now they're offering something a little bit different. FanDuel is giving you till September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With the YouTube TV-based plan, you're able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's number one sportsbook. As always, do it responsibly, but a great way to spice up your weekend. The official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's get back into this. Rajiv, we're going to put you on the spot, man. This year's Badgers basketball team better or worse than last season's?
This is really, really stressful for me because I really don't want to have to answer this because I don't. It's very hard for me to say this. My initial reaction is worse because you lose Chucky Hepburn, AJ Storr, and Tyler Wall. Like those are productive players, and you're bringing in players you don't know how productive they're going to be. I'm going to say it's worse because that production loss is not guaranteed to be replaced. That being said, I think that, like I said earlier in the show, because of the fact that they're all shooters, that we have a team full of shooters now, and I expect them to be better defensively, certainly wouldn't surprise me if they're better. In fact, I would probably almost say I predict them to be better, but I can't say definitively that they are because we lost a ton of production. So I just feel like you can't really say that they're better because we have no concept of how these guys are really going to do. And you lost a ton of your offense.
But it's so hard for you to say they won't be better, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
we have
is. Of course it is. I mean, by the way, I love this comment. Sunny Burma goes to Locked On Illini. This is the second night in a row. Wake up in the middle of the night and there's a Locked On Badgers show going on. It's funny because obviously Ryan's in Hawaii. I live in Vegas, and it's great because I'm usually having to do shows at like 8 o'clock my time at the latest, right? And then this is great because I started the show at 11:30 my time. This is perfect.
This is awesome. And Sonny, let us know, man. Like, Illinois better or worse than last year?
Please, hopefully it's worse, Sonny. I really can't. I can't. And if I don't know if Sonny probably missed my Illinois football comment, so let's not go back to that because that's depressing.
I'll say this: I think they're worse than last year. I do think they're worse than last year because you're losing. Sometimes look at it like this: look at who's acquiring the talent you're losing, right? Like who acquired AJ Storr, who acquired Chucky Hepburn. Like and then where did you acquire talent from? You have to be really, really good to replace talent from the margins of college basketball at the level of which Blue Bloods are acquiring talent from you. Does that make sense? Like the pieces we lost are going to places that really value talent and are really good at acquiring high level pieces that cost a lot of money. It's like, you had your shop ransacked and you lost your Tesla and your Mercedes, and then you went out and got a Volvo and a Hyundai. I'll say this. That sounded really terrible. I don't mean to compare any new player to a Volvo or Hyundai. I'll say this. I think there's a path where this is the other point I'd make. I think there's a path where some of the pieces we had, it did feel kind of stale at the end. Like it did feel a little bit like this mix just isn't working, and the sum is less than the whole of the parts. I think there's a chance this team, it just works a lot more cohesively together because they'll shoot, they'll space it. This is going to be the best thing that ever happened to Stephen Crowell, by the way, having 4 shooters around him all the time. I think I do think there's a chance we're better this year because it fits better.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that because everything should work more cohesively. Again, this is what Greg Gard's good teams in the past have done, and they've been is someone who they can invert. They positionless, like we talked about. They can play defense. Like, and the defense is the biggest question mark here. But yeah, I mean, they definitely could be better. But on paper, they're just not. And yeah, the way they fit, I think you said it really well there. It's just how this team fits together and how they play as a unit and how they can sort of complement each other's strengths. Like you saying with Crowell, like he can obviously hit, if he can pass, properly out of the double team and do that well, like I feel like he can hit shooters now. It definitely threatens us more. And I mean, how many times was Wall just wide open over outside of 3? Because everyone knows he's not going to shoot it. The defense can collapse. Like, you can stretch the defense so much more when you have that much weaponry. I mean, you're bringing in a power forward that shoots 39%. That's nice to have, and that's probably going to be our starting power forward. And we didn't have that last year. It's a huge lift, so it could be better, and I hope that it is.
Yeah, Dark Ray has us under 500.
Come on, Dark Ray.
It could happen. I don't know.
I mean, what do we know? It's so God.
Alien Space has us as a bubble team. They sneak in, which would also mean worse than last year. Obviously, last year's team, whatever you thought of it, was a 5 seed. So if you're a bubble team sneaking in, that would be worse. I'll say this. I'll finish on this one, and then anything else basketball you have. I'm also, despite thinking it's probably going to be worse, that's just me being real. I'm legitimately really excited to see this team. I'm really excited to see these new pieces. I think Amos is a great get. I think Freitag is going to be interesting. I love Cameron Hunter's story. I'm hoping he's good. And honestly, I think Tanjay might be the kind of the straw that stirs everything. You get a big physical wing who's going to be versatile, switchable on defense, and is just a lethal shooter, an absolutely lethal shooter. When was the last time we had that? Honestly, Ben Brust. I think we've talked about this before, but I don't remember. We haven't had a lethal shooter in years. And having
I feel like last year Max was threatening to become a lethal shooter.
Only there were moments. In that spurt, though.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But I mean, I guess actually I was going to make that comment earlier. I feel like that's an interesting storyline. Like now that we've got more shooters on the floor and we have more athleticism on the floor, I kind of hope that Max Klesmit focuses on that. Like I hope he becomes a spot up, just, a guy that can just torch you from 3. And he's not worried about trying to do the other things as much offensively. He needs to be a spot up guy. I hope he can do that this year because we always need that. That's another key element. You got to have that one killer 3-point shooter.
Sonny said Illinois talent level higher this year than last year. Then the team went to Elite Eight last year, but chemistry is an issue. 10 new players. Chemistry could be an issue. Listen, that's interesting, right? Chemistry could be an issue for Wisconsin too. A lot of new pieces you got to fit in. Alien Space says, was Connor that lockdown shooter as a freshman? I don't think he was. I think we thought he was, and then he fell off at the end.
He fell off at the end, but he was that guy. He definitely was that guy for a short time. And for most of the season, I feel like he was. And because, I mean, I'll tell you what, even if defenses were playing him like he was getting followed, he was getting face guarded and followed all over the place, because I think you had to respect him because of what he produced. And boy, I tell you, I could really use the Badgers basketball team starting off well, because in our schedule, the non-con is pretty weak. So we can rack up some wins there. I do like that we do play Arizona at home, though. I'm just, for 2 years in a row now, we've had our football team where we're so pumped about, and then it kind of had a bit of letdown when the season started. And, after last year's Washington State game, this year's Alabama game, and then last year's basketball team actually did start off pretty well, and we were kind of high, and then we fell off a cliff. And I would really love to be excited about this team and it actually come to fruition that there was something to be excited about, because my heart cannot take this continual, just being bludgeoned with bad results. I mean, all my teams are going through it right now and it's killing me.
How funny would it be if all of this hype over Luke Fickell, and by the way, I just throw it out there, I say it all the time, I still think Fickell's the right choice, and I'm not
100%.
close. Okay. But how funny would it be if all this hype over Luke Fickell and Greg Gard's the one that busts out this year, and everyone's like Greg Gard is the guy leading the best part of what Wisconsin athletics has right now.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Let's go. Bring it. Just give me something to cheer about. I mean, my NFL team is killing me. My college teams are killing me. My Premier League team's killing me. I'm just please something good happen. Let Wisconsin basketball be great.
I love that. We're going to wrap it up there. He is Rajiv. Go check him out, as always, on the Bucky Report or whenever he stops by over here. Follow him on Twitter. Follow Justin on Twitter as well. I haven't been even asking Justin because these shows are so late that if anyone wonders where Justin is,
it's 2 a.m. Central Time. He's definitely sleeping.
And I can't do it during the day because I'm working to some degree. So, yeah, that's why. But follow him on Twitter as well, as always. When you're done, you go check out Locked On College Football over on our Locked On College Football channel, 24/7 coverage of the greatest sport that we all love on Wisconsin. And we will talk later. Thank you, everybody, for listening.